Can African manufacturing be competitive worldwide? Today's guest is Seji Tobias Ogu, CEO, Americana Business Consultants, LLC in Houston, Texas. Welcome, Tobias.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for welcoming me for another edition of African Business Channel TV.
Thank you for being our guest. So let me set the stage a little bit for those of you who might not know some of these data points. This will help you in the conversation. So there are 54 countries in Africa. Obviously, there are going to be 54 different regulations, 54 different governments. Africa is 4 times the size of the United States. 1.2 billion people, and 70% of that are below the age of 30. Foreign direct investment in Africa, that is people who invest, countries and governments and businesses that invest directly in Africa, is slowing. In fact, it has slowed from a high in 2014 to today, where it's off by around 40%. So there's a significant drop. All right. So why focus on manufacturing in Africa? Well, manufacturing in Africa period, is a critical piece of building any country, any economy, right? You have to make things, and when you make things, you sell things and people consume it. That creates jobs, that creates trade, that creates a livelihood for people. In addition to that, manufacturing uses a lot of people and technology. So it's a very critical piece of any country or continent that wishes to grow. So that's why we focus on that. Now, Tobias, let's talk a little bit about manufacturing in Africa, because we know that Africa has, in terms of continent, is ranking, not at its rightful place in terms of the amount of resources it has, the amount of people, which is 1.2 billion. And not only is there 1.2 billion people, but there is also the fact that 70% of them are young, which means they're in the prime working age. So talk to me about the challenges of manufacturing in Africa. Why does Africa have so little? Is it because people didn't pay attention to it? Not enough investment? What are some of the reasons?
Yeah, you have said some of the reasons, but not all. Number one is there is no leadership in the continent. For example, Nigeria. For the past 60 years, there's no leadership. Everybody is jumping the wagon, is getting there. What is in there for me in terms of leadership, in terms of what he can grab and send overseas in the hidden bank, one thing or the other. I get it, me. Mm-hmm. So Africa is very, very low in terms of manufacturing. We're talking about right now. For example, it's on life support in terms of manufacturing. For example, Nigeria. Let us take Nigeria as a case in point, whereby they export crude oil. They refine it overseas. Instead of refining it in Nigeria, job for the youth we're talking about right now, which is 35% and younger. Okay? Right. They export it overseas. Then they will bring the refined oil. Then a lot of shenanigans will be involved, a lot of bribery and corruption. So thereby making it very impossible for the young people 35 and below to get decent jobs. Okay. So Africa is lacking in terms of manufacturing. In fact, they depend on everything from Asia and outsiders. And some of the things coming to Africa, majority of them are things we don't want, are things that do not last. I get it. So the opportunities out there in terms of manufacturing, because it's a virgin land. So instead of exporting raw materials, we can use it to manufacture the product and sell outside, thereby creating jobs for the young people 35.
Okay. All right. So you hit on a number of pieces which we're going to focus on. We're going to take apart those and discuss them, because you talk about governance, the fact that the countries themselves aren't necessarily being run by people who with serious vision to create a pathway for a country to follow. And when you're talking about 54 countries, you're talking about 54 chance of not doing it right or doing it right. But in this case, it turns out that a lot of it wasn't done right. Now, some of it obviously clearly comes from the fact that they recently got independence, and a lot of the governance, proper governance, and the leadership styles and things that they picked up weren't sufficient for Africa. But as you rightfully say, and by the way, when we refer to Nigeria, you'll hear us a lot referring to Nigeria on the show. So let me put a little context on that, because Nigeria is the largest country in Africa. In fact, it has the biggest GDP, but it is one of the poorer countries, even though it's that big and with that size GDP. Because the way you measure GDP is not just the total GDP, which is $430 something billion in 2021. You measure GDP per person, and Nigeria has 209 or 206, depending on what number you use, people. So the GDP per capita per person is actually very, very low. South Africa, on the other hand, has 3 times. Seychelles has 4 times the GDP of Nigeria. So what we're basically saying is that Nigeria is underperforming, significantly underperforming.
Sure.
And because Nigeria plays such a critical role in Africa, Nigeria is kind of like the older brother. If there's something wrong with the older brother, the whole family is going to suffer.
Yes.
So literally, we have to get Nigeria sort of sorted out, and then everybody else will be able to function normally. So that's the reason why you see we refer to it a lot. It's a critical country in this whole process. Now, all right, so let's come back and talk about the Africa's GDP, because you rightfully mentioned that a lot of it does not. A lot of Africa's GDP right now is actually generated from sales. So, for example, somebody buys something from overseas. Let's say they buy a generator. That generator is then sold to a middle person, which generates a little bit of GDP, and then that person is sold to another retailer, and then finally to a consumer who buys it. Those are all generating GDPs, but they're not generating the kind of GDP that you would get if you were manufacturing the thing.
Exactly.
In other words, high value GDP, right?
Yes.
In addition, we all know that manufacturing generates a lot of jobs.
Sure.
So speak about the fact that a lot of Nigerian and African products are imported, or at least the things that are consumed there.
Yes, because we have been very much relying on foreign products. The continent, I can say, is a consumer continent, especially Nigeria. Nigeria is a consuming nation, not a manufacturing nation. But we hope that it can be turned around, whereby we're going to make use of our ingenuity, creativity, and the brain God gave us to start thinking about manufacturing in the continent, manufacturing in Nigeria, whereby we're going to be trying to get machine shops, equipment to the continent. And for example, the generator you are talking about, we have the guys there who can be taught how to make generators, and they start manufacturing high quality generators and be sending it to Asia countries, another country that have been shipping for the past 100 years to the continent. So manufacturing is the key. So you have been hitting on it, manufacturing, and that is where the GDP, the major portion of it relies, where it is. So if we cannot be able to manufacture, our currency will continue to devalue. Do you understand? So you can see that Naira right now versus dollar now is shooting up for the fact that we don't manufacture anything.
Right.
Everybody depends on foreign-made products.
Right, and which means the production is overseas.
Overseas, coming from overseas. And most of the product coming from overseas is of low quality. Most of them are low quality, and they did not meet standards, international standards in terms of emission control, in terms of all kinds of stuff that government regulates. You know what I'm saying?
Got you. All right, so let me touch on a little piece of what you just talked about there, which is a little bit of information. So in 1970, Nigeria's exports, 70% of it was textile,
Good.
light manufacturing, and agriculture.
Sure.
70%. And
Uh-huh.
only 30% was petroleum.
Petrol.
Today, it's the reverse. It's 75% petroleum and a little bit of agriculture, and very little textile. So literally, we see where and by the way, as I think you pointed out just a little earlier, that a lot of the petroleum that's exported is exported as unrefined crude, and Nigeria consumes refined products, which means it has to import it. And there's a Dangote in refinery, but that's just recently, and it's not sure if it's up yet. So the lost opportunity, obviously, of refining it home. That's part of what we're talking about when we say manufacturing in the continent itself, rather than sort of importing. All right, let me ask you this. The you talk about the fact that a lot of the imports, some of the challenges to starting a business in Africa. Talk about some of the challenges if you're going to start a manufacturing business in Africa. What are some of the things you're going to obstacles you're going to face?
Okay. In the continent of Africa, there are a lot of challenges one we encounter in trying to set up a small manufacturing plant in the continent. Number one is the fact that government is not supportive. If we can get government that is supportive in terms of encouraging small manufacturing companies or individuals that are interested in manufacturing equipment, then that would be number one. Number two is skill. Remember, the continent is, technologically, they are not there yet. They are very low skill in terms of technology. We are over here in the United States, we are advanced. I get it. So we need to have that technology in order to advance our people, in order to advance knowledge, in order to be able to manufacture at least standard product that can be exported and sell. Are you getting me? And yes. Another one is encouragement from the government. What's called is government encouraging small people or individuals to set up small businesses instead of relying overseas. Even if they are making it in the continent with government support. For example, let me give you a cool case in point in Nigeria, Innocent Motors. He makes some components, assembles it in Nigeria, okay? Does Nigerian government support it? Hell no, they don't. Instead, they buy from overseas. So these are
hold on. Are you saying that a homegrown motor vehicle manufacturing company, Innocent, you're saying that the government is not supporting something like that? Because we know, for example, that in South Korea, when Hyundai was just starting out, that the government, and their vehicles weren't that, not today's quality, that the governments supported it by buying vehicle for government. You're saying that's not what's happening in this case in Nigeria.
That is not what is happening in Nigeria. In fact, the government wants to kill it. They want to eliminate it. They want to even close that Innocent Motor Company. I'm telling you, I'm being honest with you. How can he survive in terms of manufacturing the vehicles without the home-based government, the home-based people, without me and you supporting him, buying from him? Then instead, they prefer buying overseas.
But part of the challenge I see in Africa, and I see it in so many countries, the governments themselves, because we talked about governance earlier.
Yes.
The importance of governance to make sure that you have a climate, where you foster investments, you encourage and you subsidize technology. Because what I'm seeing now is governments subsidizing consumption and not subsidizing manufacturing.
Yes.
Which is the complete opposite, because in the case of Nigeria, for example, I believe the current fuel subsidy is about $7 billion. And $7 billion, if that were used towards, let's say, producing power, that is a critical piece of manufacturing.
Right.
That it would, in the end, it would turn out and pay back a dividend, as opposed to consumption, which doesn't have a dividend. You consume it and it's gone. So every time you spend that $7 billion, there's no recouping of that $7 billion. It's gone. But if you invest that money in infrastructure and other things, then obviously you're going to make the infrastructure better for manufacturing. All right, let me borrow part of what you just said there. So the technology, you're saying technology is an expensive part of any manufacturing process, and you're saying that it is not readily affordable on the continent. Let's talk about funding then, because one of the things we know is that no one starts a business without funding.
Yes.
What is the funding situation like? Can you walk into a bank and say, "Hey, listen, Mr. Bank, I have a great idea. I have this great idea. Um, you know, I understand the market that I'm going to put this thing in. Lend me, 16,000 or 16 million, Kenyan shillings." And they say, "Oh, here you are. Here's a Kenyan shilling." Is that the way it works there, or is there much more complicated?
Number one, what you describe right now, to me, it is a dream in Nigeria. And I believe it is the same in some of the African countries. Nobody encourages new or emerging small business or businesses. They don't do it. Even those that are already existing, you have to give them, in fact, your blood, whatever you have as collateral for them to assist you. The banks in the continent are not encouraging at all. In fact, they are bringing production, they are bringing trade down, everything, economy down, they're slowing it down because what they care is cash. You see, the only thing they don't even understand what's called business development. They don't even engage in that. They don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. What they're interested in is cash, deposit and withdrawal. That's all they do. They don't know.
So the bank, in the case of the bank, you're saying that I would have a difficult time getting any money, if I would get any money whatsoever.
Yes, very, very difficult for you to get 1 cent.
All right. Okay. So that's the case, and obviously that's the challenge. We know that for many countries to develop properly, right? We know that you have to have foreign direct investments.
Right.
And I mentioned earlier towards the start of the show that foreign direct investments, that is people from the diaspora and companies and outsiders who come in and put money down and, let's say, start something or expand on something. Let's talk about the potential for the diaspora, because Africa has a pretty substantial diaspora. With, as far as I know, there are I think $2 or $3 trillion at their disposal. So what's happening there? Is there some provisions being made? What's going on in terms of trying to get the diaspora involved in this?
Yes, Mr. Brown. Always, whenever I'm on your show, I want to also talk about Kubwa.com. What you're saying now is that we have opportunity right now where diasporas are right now involved, focusing on the 54 African countries and the diaspora markets. So Kubwa.com is a high-tech. It's a high-tech e-commerce that is coming to the continent, trying to make life easier for everybody that trades in the continent. In fact, it's a big game changer. If it can be implemented, already it's on the ground. The only thing is that with the government in the African countries, with all people embrace it so that we can change the status quo in terms of trading, in terms of manufacturing, because Kubwa.com concentrate on manufacturing, and trading. Are you getting me? So if we can ginger the diasporas to come on board, and they have the economic power to push things in the continent, to change the continent. Because as I said before, Peter Tosh said, if you're a black man, you're an African. So let us remove other distractions and be able to come together and follow Kubwa.com to change the continent for the better of Africans and African diasporas and everybody in the continent. Are you getting me? So Kubwa.com and e-commerce technology is a game changer, and we have it as it is right now.
You talk about Kubwa. One of the challenges that Africans face, any African business, right, is, as you said, they face actually some of the challenges they face. They face um, very expensive technology. They face funding challenges. They face lack of expertise. Right?
Sure.
Those are critical pieces of things that are necessary to start any business. Now, you mentioned Kubwa, and uh, let's talk about how, if you were a small, okay, if you were a small manufacturer, so let's take a small manufacturer, for example. Let's say you're going to make, let's say you're going to make windows, right? You're a window manufacturer. So one of the things you're going to clearly want to do is, first of all, you need to understand how big your market is. Now, that requires research, that requires data, which might not necessarily be available to the person who wants to start that business. So somehow they can start it, but they would be completely blind and there's no telling whether or not they'll be successful because they don't know what the market looks like. Secondly, in terms of funding, if you were to walk into a bank and say, hey, bank, I want to make something, and they ask you what the size of your market is and you can't tell them, that's going to be a challenge. The other part of it, though, is understanding the market itself and see what it's going to take, because you might be able to make your product, for example, but you can't ship it because you don't have, Africa is a big place. As I mentioned before, Africa is 4 times the size of the United States. So it's a very big place. So, if you're going to sell within your country, or you in the capital, or you're close to the markets and all those things, those are things you have to factor in. I bring them up because every single person who starts a business has to have those things in mind. So let me ask you this. You mentioned Kubwa, Kuubwa. Let's tell me how Kubwa would help with those situations. Does Kubwa supply them a market? What does Kubwa do in terms of, how would Kubwa fit into that manufacturing? I want to start a business. Should I come to you first, for example? Should I come to Kubwa and say, hey, guys, I'm looking to start something? Or do you go start it first and then come back to Kubwa?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Kubwa.com, as I said before, is an e-commerce that can facilitate, that can help a small manufacturing company, medium-sized or large company, to export their product worldwide, especially to 54 African countries, diaspora market, and in between. Are you getting me? So Kubwa.com, as I said before, encourages small manufacturing, individual small youth, for them to set up their own manufacturing company. We assist them in getting on board to market whatever they are producing. Instead of focusing their little product, their manufacturing within their localities, Kubwa.com will expose them to 54 African countries, diaspora market. Anybody who is interested in buying their product is huge, as opposed to making that little, say, window. If at all, window is made in the continent, window is made overseas and shipped in the continent. So if
let me follow up with what you just said there. So in the case of the individual, what you're saying is that the Kubwa itself is like a marketing platform then that the person can. So one of the obviously big challenge they're facing is what my market look like.
Exactly.
So you're saying that Kubwa is opening up a much larger market than an individual who would be just trying to probably find out who's locally want to consume the window.
Exactly. Kubwa exposes each manufacturing company in the continent or selling company in the continent a larger audience, huge, 54 African countries and diaspora market. I get me. For example, you mentioned about window. If that window is being made in, say, in Imo State or Anambra State or any place or in Kenya, and that small manufacturer right there will have the ability at this time, instead of marketing within his or her locality, that small area, because he hasn't the means of getting his product or her product out there to a larger market. Kubwa.com will make it easier. The person will go online, very simple, post it right there. Myself here, in the United States, in Houston, I will see it. And I
Oh,
like it, I
okay.
will buy. And you yourself in New York, you will also see it and you buy.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So for again, for those of you who are watching, um, it's critical that you know your market. You know, at least you have a big market for your goods. The larger the market, the greater the chance of you succeeding. It's just fact of business, right? It's
That's
fact
it.
of business.
Bingo.
Now, in terms of so that's the market side of things. Let's get delved down now because manufacturing requires sourcing raw materials and so forth. Does Kubwa even help these people to source raw materials? Is this Kubwa just a finished product type thing where you sell?
No, Kubwa has a lot of cool features that
Mm-hmm.
can help you look for where you can buy the equipment to manufacture, where you can get the raw materials within the continent to make the products. Remember, Kubwa.com allows a seller or a manufacturer to get on board Kubwa.com e-commerce. At least 70% or whatever the person is going to use to make that product must come from the continent. It's a requirement. So if you have 70% or more raw materials and you hire Africans right here, then you qualify to get on Kubwa.com easy. And yeah, I tell you, from making maybe 20 windows within your locality, selling in a week, when you get on Kubwa.com, you may be selling 10,000. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
All right. So that's amazing. Now, so that handles the market. Now, one of the things so if I am the window manufacturer, I have to hire somebody on the sales side.
Sure.
So that's another expense.
Sure.
Right? I'm gonna have to, if I pay somebody or I pay a marketing firm to make something like that, right? To market for me,
Sure.
that is an additional expense I have to factor in. So you're saying that with Kubwa, you get that as part of the process of selling on the platform.
You will eliminate that. You won't feel the pain of getting where do I stretch a dollar to get somebody to market for you. With Kubwa.com, Kubwa does it for you free of charge. Free of charge. You don't need to worry about it. The only thing you need to do is to qualify. It's basic qualification. 70% of what you're going to be making has to come from the continent, raw materials. You qualify. Simply get on board. Kubwa will market your item for you.
Awesome. All right. So the other piece of this then is so that's the selling side of things.
Yes.
And we talk about the fact that you get the raw material. You can get the raw material on Kubwa itself, but you get that those are African raw materials, right? And we again just for the audience, the big focus here is manufacturing. We have to make things in Africa. If we don't make things in Africa, and we just import them, then all the development and the jobs that go with manufacturing
will go overseas. And our youth and our youth have no employment. They will be roaming on the street. They come up from the universities or colleges. They have no employment. So because we lack manufacturing capability, that's the reason you see a lot of millions of African youth roaming. Some of them trying to cross across the Mediterranean Sea, going to Europe. They drown. So if we have manufacturing companies in the continent, it will put them there. Everything will normalize. Nobody will try to leave the continent to go somewhere he or she does not know.
Awesome. Now, one of the aspects of competition, because the top title of the show is can African manufacturing be competitive worldwide? We know, just like an athlete, athletics, for example, you can practice on your own. But until you start to run with competitors, that's when you know how can you really run. Will you be first or dead last in a race? The same thing is true in Africa, right?
Yes.
Inter-Africa trade, which the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and for those of you who do not know what the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is, in our previous show on this channel, we touched on it in more detail. And we will have a show exclusively for it at some point in the future. But in the meantime, you can go watch the previous show that we have and see the discussion about Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. What is it, and why it was necessary. Now, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is about fostering trade, manufacturing and trade within the continent. So what I'm hearing is that if somebody comes on Kubwa, let me be the average guy on the street, because they're gonna, and by the way, Kubwa is spelled KUUBWA.com. KUUBWA.com. But let me be the average person, because I have to factor in what the audience might want to ask you. So if in order to be competitive worldwide, African companies have to be competitive within Africa.
Right.
So with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and with Kubwa supporting the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, what I'm hearing then is that you could have 4 manufacturers of windows.
Right.
Within Africa, one in Nigeria, one in Kenya, one in Tanzania, and maybe one in Zambia. And they're competing amongst themselves.
Yes.
Right? Which then gives them strength and muscle, and they can observe the other companies' windows to see if they're ahead of them or behind them, and catch up on that, right?
Exactly.
Before they go out and tackle the world. In other words, you practice at home on the continent before you go out and compete. Because one of the things that people don't recognize, and people, they see the United States and technology from the United States as so powerful, but they don't understand the business climate and the situation or competitive environment in the United States. So in the United States, for those of you who don't know, there are 50 states. Each state is almost like a mini country within the side of the United States. But what I want you to understand is that in the United States, a company that starts in, let's say, New York, has to be competitive across the whole United States. In other words, if you make a widget in New York and somebody else make the same widget in Texas, you have to compete with them.
Yes.
So by the time you corner the whole US market, or you are powerful in the US market, you can go take on the world. So when an outsider sees the United States show up, especially their technology company, they show up as powerhouses, but they weren't always powerhouses. The internal competition forces them to be, good at their game. And so the same thing should happen in Africa when Africans compete amongst themselves. So that by the time they decide, the company decides, okay, I want to venture out and, let's say, make 60% of my sales outside the continent, the competition from the local window manufacturers would have toughened them up and give them that cutting edge. Am I saying it right?
Sure. Well, what you're saying is accurate. It's straight to the point. Because competition, what competition brings quality products and the price. Can you give me quality products at so price? Remember, high price sometimes does not give you anything. Mm-hmm. People can buy your product, and when they find out that it's inferior, they will return it to you. The way we behave here. I buy your product, and I find out it's inferior, of low quality, we're going to return it to you. So that we make those African manufacturers I'm going to look for machine shops that can help me manufacture high quality products that I can sell overseas. I can be able to compete within Nigeria, for example, within Africa and outside. Are you getting me? That will be fierce competition. Are you getting me? So everybody will be moving left and right, moving this way or the other way in order to make sure they make quality products. Then they put their price. Now, remember, if you're making the same technology I'm making, the same thing, it's going to be determined by price. How much do you sell your own? Same quality, same everything, okay? So if your price is lower than mine, somebody's going to buy from you.
So you have to be efficient. In other words, you're forcing efficiency.
Sure, efficiency, exactly.
Right. One of the things, and that's so important, technology brings efficiency. Let me give a simple example for the audience. Imagine you and I are competing. We make pools. We dig the hole to make pool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have 50 employees. I have 2. You will say, well, okay. And you say, my 2 employees are involved in digging the hole, and your 50 employees are digging the hole. On the face of that, it sounds like you should win.
Yeah,
You can dig more holes than me because you got 25 times the people that I have.
sure.
But here is the game changer, technology. So you're using manpower to dig those things and create a hole. I have two guys on two backhoes. By the time you dig one hole and your folks are dying of, thirst and tired, my guys dig four holes and are on to the next one.
Exactly.
So technology is a game changer in a case like that. That's efficiency. That's called efficiency. Two people can do the work of 50 people. In fact, they probably could do the work of 100 people. But that's what efficiency is all about, where you can squeeze more end result or product, right, or quality out of the same input. So with just two people, now you say, well, listen, for the business minded of you, you might say, well, okay, hold on. But you have to, at the end of the month, you have to pay for that big expensive machinery. And I say, yes, but because I can dig 25 holes instead of your two hole, I have enough profits to pay the machinery, have enough money left over for myself,
Exactly.
and still I'm more efficient than you.
Sure.
So when we talk about efficiency, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
The ability to produce something high quality at low cost.
Low cost.
Right? And so that's what efficiency is all about. So when we talk about competition, you and I might have started the same company with the same 50 employees. But then from a competition perspective, I realized to compete, I need to go buy two backhoes. And a backhoe is the thing that sticks up and for those of you who might not know, and take out the earth. And so you can dig very deep and very big holes in a very short time. So from an efficiency perspective, it behooves me to go get the technology to produce more, right?
Yes.
So that's what we're talking about. And that's what the United States, when you're in the United States, to be competitive in the United States, you must do that. Otherwise, you won't have a chance to compete. And when a company comes up in that environment in the United States or Europe, when they leave that and go up overseas, they're very, very competitive. And if you are just starting out in Africa as a window manufacturer, you're going to have to compete with companies that have been making windows for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and who are using equipment. So let's come back to what one of the things you talked about, which is making sure you get enough equipment. That comes back to money.
Money.
I went to the bank and I said, Mr. Banker, I need money to buy the machine to make the window, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying that there's a challenge right now because the funding in Africa is not there's not sufficient funding. The diaspora that we just talked about, that we mentioned earlier, my understanding is they have $2 trillion. Are African governments trying to court these people to invest into the continent? Because that's a huge source of money.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, some African countries are trying to lure them to various countries. For example, Uganda. There are some group of guys that went there and set up a bank. Like Akon went to Senegal, building. But Nigeria, I'm not seeing any sign. What I'm hearing is diaspora office. It looks like it's a shoe. It's business, a shoe for themselves, not real. If they are in touch, by now, they could have gotten in touch with me, knowing fully well that I'm in the forefront of this fight, trying to bring diaspora to the continent. Are you getting me? So yes. The issue right now is that we have to, Kubwa.com is a pioneer right now. And we have to make effort here, try to bring diaspora on board, try to let them know what is going to happen. We are not going to rely on what is going on in Nigeria to say, okay, because of instability, we don't have a government properly set up. We don't have, no, that's not going to be an excuse. No, we can make a change. We can make a difference by coming together. Diaspora is a huge market. They got everything. They got the technology. They got the money to make a difference in the continent. I'm telling you. If diasporas can agree, in fact, 50% of 50% of diasporas outside can change Africa with their technology, manpower, and money.
So let me throw in there another example of diaspora is, take somebody who works in GM,
Yes.
the General Motors, the car manufacturer. So let's say you are a worker there and you make, you're in the window factory or the windshield factory where you make the car windshield. You're privy to serious technology in terms of, the way of doing things. If you were to bring that knowledge back to Africa, to let's say a windshield manufacturer who might be only making 5 windshields a day, you could probably easily show them how they can make 100 windshields a day.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking
Right.
about, Mr. Brown. That's manpower, the technology I'm talking about. We have the guys in diaspora that will make a difference, that will change Africa, that will bring all these technology I'm talking about, manufacturing, straight down there. We have diaspora in all aspects of human endeavors right here, in all sectors of businesses. Every sector in America, the diasporas are out there, that we can tap their talent, that we can tap what they have to transfer it to the continent, which is called technology transfer. Are you getting me?
Right. We've seen an example of that, and that is China. China tapped, heavily on their diaspora to bring the knowledge home.
Okay.
I know, for example, there's a gentleman at Texas Instrument, a Chinese gentleman, who China actually recruited back home and gave him the leadership position in a chip making company back in China. So there are examples of that. Even the United States, when it was first starting out, a lot of the technology came from Europe, actually came from Britain. So there is a long history of, recruiting people back to the continent or recruiting people to where you are. So in this case, Africa clearly, as you said, can benefit from that.
Exactly.
So let me sort of kind of wind up the show a little bit here now, because so the original, again, the topic of the show is, can African manufacturing be competitive worldwide? Well, the answer is yes, it can be, but there are a lot of things that have to happen.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yes, I do agree. But if we can come together here, diasporas can come, because I don't want to depend on the people on the ground in the continent, because they have, in fact, I have lost confidence in what they're trying to do
Right.
here, especially
they may or may not have the knowledge too. That's the other thing. Here's the thing: outside of the continent, Africans have a lot of knowledge. You can find Africans in just about every high-level positions around the world. Doctors, lawyers, scientists, all that knowledge. Again, China used that knowledge to bring back to China and help them to build up their environment. So, gathering from all of this conversation, it's safe to agree that at some point Africa will be competitive.
Sure.
Not right now, but at some point it can be competitive. And in order for it to be competitive, that there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. Exactly. Bring the diaspora back, bring their knowledge back, increase manufacturing on the continent, increase funding on the continent. And as you rightfully point out, Kubwa.com is doing its part, but it alone can't do it. We need people to come back to Africa. And again, I said earlier that on this channel, we're going to be focusing a lot on African manufacturing, because African manufacturing is how Africa is going to pull itself out of, the tight straits that it's in right now. African manufacturing is how it's going to provide jobs for its, millions upon millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of youth who desperately need employment. And for the many, 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 many hundreds of thousands of engineers who graduate and technologists who graduate from college back in Africa, for them to have a job, as opposed to what we currently have now, which is a significant brain drain, meaning the brightest and the best run off to overseas and build up those other economies, not Africa itself. So, Tobias, I want to thank you for being today's guests.
Thank
For
you.
those of you who have never seen this channel, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have already subscribed, please hit the notification bell so that when there are new shows, you can be notified of the new shows. We'd like to hear from you as well. We'd like to hear, put your comments in, and tell us what you think, what you'd like to see on subsequent shows, and just any general purpose comment that you have. We do read it, and we do care about what you say in the comment section. If you'd like to appear on the show, 1 second, I'm going to acknowledge you a second. If you'd like to appear on the show, you can send us, just put your information in the email, or just tell us you'd like to reach to us, or you could send us an email at africabusinesschannel@gmail.com, africabusinesschannel@gmail.com. But it is one N in channel, Africa Business Channel with one N @gmail.com. If you send us an email, we'll certainly respond to you. Go ahead, Tobias.
Yes, Mr. Brown, before you close the show, I want to tell the diaspora, as Peter Tosh, as he says, if you're a black man, you're an African. Brothers and sisters in diasporas, I'm inviting everyone with open arms to come on board Kubwa.com so that we can make a difference in the continent. We are not going to be blaming a white man or anybody else. The ball now is in our court to play it. Again, Peter Tosh put it, summarizes it, says, if you're a black man, you're an African. So brothers, come on board with Kubwa.com.
Thank you so much, Tobias, for your time and for your information.
Thank you.